Hello, countries around the Gulf are reporting a new round of Iranian missile and drone attacks. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain said they were responding to incoming fire and warned residents to seek shelter. Drones have reportedly fallen near Dubai airport, injuring 4 people. A UK maritime monitor said a cargo ship was struck in the Strait of Hormuz, starting a fire and forcing the crew to evacuate. It comes after President Trump warned Iran over mining the strait. The US military says it's destroyed 16 Iranian mine-laying vessels near the Strait of Hormuz. The narrow waterway is the world's busiest shipping lane for the transportation of oil. Maritime movements here is effectively at a standstill, and the impact's being felt right across the globe. In Lebanon, state media says Israel has hit an apartment block in central Beirut the second time. The centre of the capital's been hit since the start of the war, and there were heavy strikes across the country overnight. Iran has also been hit in overnight strikes. These are the latest pictures coming into us. Officials saying more than 1,300 people have been killed by the US and Israeli airstrikes since the war began. State security forces in Iran have warned they're ready with their fingers on the trigger to confront any anti-government protests. And the conflict's also a war of words after the US said Tuesday's strikes on Iran were going to be the most intense yet. Iran said its barrage targeting Israel and what it calls US interest in the region was the biggest it had yet fired. The second container ship that's been hit off the coast of the UAE was targeted by an unidentified projectile. The incident took place around 50 nautical miles northwest of Dubai. Our correspondent Barbara Plett-Usher is in Doha and told us more.
We've had these reports from this UK maritime monitor that there have been 2 ships hit by suspected unknown projectiles, as they phrase it, in the last little while. One of them is a cargo ship that was hit in the Strait of Hormuz close to Oman that started a fire, and the crew was being evacuated. The other one was much earlier off the coast of the United Arab Emirates, a container ship, again hit by a suspected unknown projectile. And there was some damage, but there were no injuries or casualties reported from the crew. This would probably be about the 12th such suspected Iranian attack reported since the war began in the whole Gulf area, I should say. And it is one of the main reasons why the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has almost dried up because of the risk of going through, also because insurers aren't going to cover these costs. And you know, there's been discussion from the United States and from Europe about perhaps having a military naval escort, but that hasn't gotten off the ground yet and probably won't, or is unlikely to, while the hot conflict continues. You also had this concern expressed by the Americans that the Iranians might start mining the Strait of Hormuz. They have before in the 1980s. No indication so far that they are doing so this time. President Trump said he had not received any reports of such activity, but the Americans did strike 16 mine-laying vessels overnight. These were, it seemed, most of them inactive, moored when they were hit, but apparently a preventive strike.
That's Barbara Plett-Usher in Doha. Let's go to Israel now, and our Middle East correspondent Yolan Nell is in Jerusalem. Yolan, what is Israel saying about the strikes it has been carrying out on Lebanon and Iran?
Well, after a day of some of the heaviest bombardment yet on Iran yesterday, the Israeli forces and American forces working with them kept up their attacks on Tehran overnight. Explosions reported there. The Israeli military saying that it also attacked what it said were command centers for the armed forces in the west of Iran. And in general, it has been deepening the damage to the regime, it says. Millions of Israelis in the center of the country, people living in Jewish settlements in the north of the occupied West Bank. Here in Jerusalem, people were also woken up by alarms that went off repeatedly in the night to warn of incoming rockets from Iran. We heard the thuds of loud interceptions overhead. There are not reports of casualties, but that does really underline how the Iranian government has still got this military capability, is still able to fire ballistic missiles at the direction of Israel.
And with that incoming fire continue to come from Iran, Yolanda, how is public opinion being shaped by the continuation of this war?
Yeah, it does come as something of a surprise that, there's so much disruption to normal life here. People sent off, rushing to their shelters several times in the course of the day. Yesterday and today in the north of Israel, there is the ongoing fighting with Hezbollah. So there is the risk there of drones incoming and missiles, people going to their air raid shelters frequently because of that. But the public support for Israel's war with Iran does remain very high. That is because people see Iran as having been something like an existential threat. That is what, the polls indicate when it comes to Jewish Israelis in particular. And they want this war to deal with the ballistic missile threat from Iran, its nuclear program, and also its support for proxies around the region, in particular Hezbollah in neighboring Lebanon. But that said, the Israeli media reporting today that while you still have these comments from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in particular, who was posting on X late yesterday, calling on the people of Iran to overthrow their religious leadership and gain their freedom. He said, "We will pass the torch to you, grasp your destiny." Well, the Israeli media commenting that really it's seen now by Israeli officials that it is much less likely that regime change will come about directly as a result of the US and Israeli joint action in Iran. And instead, what is really being focused on in the target list of the Israeli military is going after the military and governing capabilities of the Iranian leadership.
Yolande, thank you very much. Yolande now in Jerusalem. Well, from Israel to Lebanon. I've been speaking to Lina Sinjab, who's in Beirut, and she's been telling us what it's been like with those strikes by Israel from the last few hours.
Well, I woke up in the early hours of the morning around 5 a.m. to the sound of the attack, apparently coming from a vessel, because it was really loud coming here from the seaside, and then the explosion followed. The attack took place in Aisha Bakar neighborhood, which is, up the hill from where I live, like few streets up the hill. This is pretty central Beirut, and we can see the pictures of the aftermath. At least 3 apartments, 3 stories were targeted. The Israeli media is saying that it was targeting Islamic group. 4 members were hit, but we don't have any confirmation yet about that. But these kind of attacks in central city, in residential areas, away from Hezbollah's stronghold, are sending, waves of fear among the Lebanese. And this is the second time in a course of a week an attack happens in central Beirut. A few days ago, also very close to where I live and where I'm standing now, at the seaside, a hotel, a five-star hotel was hit by the seaside. Israel said they were targeting a Revolutionary Guards member, and yesterday the Iranians came out to announce that 4 diplomats were killed. As much as this is causing anger against the Israelis, with more attacks on civilians, 500 have been killed so far, 700,000 are displaced, and most of them are out in the streets in shelters or living in tents with nowhere to go to. But it's also causing anger against Hezbollah and the Iranians, for firing rockets against Israel, causing this whole war, and B, staying among civilians, which is prompting targeted attacks against civilians who have nothing to do with this war and paying the highest price in this war.
Yeah, and the difficulties caused, Lina, by the movement of such a large number of people. You mentioned 700,000 now.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we have, these are the figures registered as displaced, but it may be more because some people stay with their families or are able to check into 5-star hotels and stay there, or even left the country as a whole. But the question is, for many, is when is this ending? This is the second time Lebanese are forced to be displaced, forced to leave towns and villages and homes, and because of the war. 15 months months ago in 2024, they've lived exactly the same experience. And many of them who've lost their homes, they couldn't rebuild them because there was no money to reconstruct or rebuild. And now they're losing their homes again in towns and villages, with fears that, in the south of Lebanon, the areas that Israel are asking people to leave and evacuate, probably it's going to be a buffer zone and they will not be able to go back to. And the government so far, despite criticism to Hezbollah and calling for direct negotiations with the Israelis, they seem to be in a very weak position and unable to control Hezbollah's actions that are prompting these kind of attacks by Israel.
Lina Sinjab in Beirut. Let's go back to those reports that drones have fallen near Dubai International Airport, injuring a number of people. Let's talk to our correspondent Nick Beek in Dubai. Nick, just tell us what you know.
Karen, yes, this is information that's coming from the authorities here in Dubai, saying that at the main international airport there have been 2 drones that fell in the vicinity of the airport. That is the phrase from officials. We don't know what that translates to, how near these drones were to hitting any planes or hitting terminal buildings. But certainly we spoke to someone earlier who was saying that for about half an hour or so they were told to come away from glass windows and all passengers were congregating in an area that was deemed to be more safe and less at risk. Operations have now resumed, but the information is that 4 people have been injured, 1 person with moderate injuries, that's the description, 3 with minor injuries. And we will, of course, bring more information as we get it. Now, on Saturday, a lot of people might have seen that video which showed a previous strike very near the airport, near to terminal buildings. You could see planes on the tarmac in that footage. So once again, it seems that Iranian drones have got through to this airport, which is hugely busy, and had been trying to get those flights coming in and leaving once more. And there was quite a lot of disruption in the skies this morning, as you can imagine. Flight tracking showing lots of different planes taking unusual routes, as this was clearly an alert that people had to deal with.
And Nick, from what's going on at the airport to what's going on off the coast of the UAE, tell us more about those reports of a cargo vessel, a 3rd cargo vessel, being hit by a projectile.
Yeah, you're right, Karen. Iran seems to be continuing its strikes at land and at sea. In the Strait of Hormuz, what we've seen is 3 reported strikes on vessels in the space of a few hours. Now, that is something we haven't seen. Previously, over the past 10 days, there have been 10 reported incidents, attacks on vessels, but now we've seen this cluster close together, and obviously it follows the Americans hitting out, saying that they'd managed to strike 16 Iranian vessels. In those 3 cases this morning, in the most severe, it would seem, there was a fire that took hold. There had to be an evacuation. We haven't got the latest on the condition of the crew on board and what happened to them, what this evacuation process looked like, how long it lasted for, and what the consequences have been. With the other 2 incidents, we were told that the crews were safe and well, but clearly a concern, and it highlights once again the threat to vessels that for the most part are stuck in the Strait of Hormuz at the moment, fearful of moving through what is an active war zone.
And Nick, there in Dubai and in the wider United Arab Emirates, what's the continuing effect on daily life of all this?
Well, you may be able to hear that all the construction behind me, which continues at pace here. This is a city that is forever growing. Overnight, there were some alerts, again, sent to people's phones. Interestingly, they've changed in the past 24 hours their alert system, so no longer is it a piercing, repeated beeping you get on your mobile phone, whether or not you're registered for alerts. Now it's just a ping that you might get if you're getting a message from anyone else. And so that has been a change, but despite that softening of the way people are given these warnings, the warnings continue, and every day the United Arab Emirates are reporting that missiles and drones have been intercepted that have been sent from Iran. But if we look at the last sort of 10 or 11 days, Karen, the first 8 days, more than 100 drones were being fired every day, and in the most part being intercepted. That number has dipped in the past few days. We don't know if that is a temporary lull or it represents a more significant and long-lasting sort of dip in the number of drones being sent. But certainly Iran continues to attack this country and its Gulf neighbours, all those it deems to be working with the Americans or linked to the Americans. And so in the eyes of Tehran, these are countries that it's justified hitting back at.
Nick, thank you very much. Nick Beek there, live in Dubai.